So what if the key to better health, reduce stress, and enhance well-being was right under your nose? Discover how conscious breathing can transform your mind and body, creating a powerful offering for healing and wellness. Stay with us today to harness the power of your breathing for life-changing power. Okay, so we are WellWaveNOW and welcome you to this. And we are your portal for actionable wellness insights. So I want you to meet the team here that's going to give you that. First, there's Breck Rice, who is the healthcare disruptor. And he is also the chairman of Brim Health, a expert in community and integrative wellness, and a decoder of medication complexities. We have Dr. Bob Levine here with us, who is a renowned brain researcher and an expert in the elimination of pain in a drug-free manner. And I'm Tim Daniels, your wellness plan manager, creating actionable wellness plans to help you deliver optimal wellness with approaches that are as unique as you are. And I've got a background expertise in pulse electromagnetic field therapy, which I incorporate into that. So today and in general, we are your wellness catalysts. We're committed to elevating your health and enhancing your functionality and optimizing your performance at every stage of your life. We work and strive our best to bring you innovative strategies to boost your happiness and unlock your body's full potential. So we're WellWaveNOW, where timeless wisdom will hopefully light your wellness path. So today, the path we're taking is on breathwork, as I mentioned earlier. So, and of course, breathing is important to everyday life, but it's also integral to everything we do. So, but here we're going to talk about and really focus on how it helps you from a health standpoint and a wellness standpoint, not just to continue to live. Okay. So what is breath work? So a couple of things, often people, if someone's really excited or really tense, they'll say, calm down, breathe. That's breath work. If someone is hyperventilating, they used to give them an old paper bag and they bring the paper bag. Well, that's breath work. But there's even more beyond that in terms of breath work than what breath work really is. It's the intentional practice of controlling your breathing to influence you both mentally, emotionally, and physically. And in the real rigorous practices that grew out of yoga, grew out of the Buddhist meditations and things of that nature and things of that type, but they've been updated and taken out of those practices, and especially out of the Buddhism, out of the religious entities, religious aspects of that, to focus more on today on how it can help your wellness, how it can help your healing, how it can change your body, all those practices that they've brought to bear through that. So with that, and so there's not only sort of so it's meant for relax. The whole day is meant for relaxation, for focus, for clarity. But there's also some real science behind that. So I'm going to turn it over to our renowned brain researcher, Bob Levine, to give us a little more insight on the scientific backing behind breathwork.
Thank you, Tim. First of all, fortunately for all of us, breathing happens automatically. So it requires no conscious action. The breathing is regulated by the autonomic nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system regulates automatically many physiological processes, including heart rate, blood pressure, digestion, sexual arousal, and others. So, but think about this. When is breathing likely to have a long pause? What do you think about that? When is breathing likely to have a long pause? I would say that if somebody initiates a fear response, they're going to hold their breath. If they're being shocked or surprised, they're going to hold their breath. If they're going to initiate movement, like getting out of a chair or going to sit down in a chair, as an example, people almost always hold their breath. So it's interesting that these types of things occur. And I just want to bring up one point about the initiating a movement, because that is so important for people to know that when they're initiating movement, they really want to focus on breathing while initiating the movement. So if you're going to let's just take getting out of a chair, for example. If you're going to get out of the chair, notice if you're holding your breath. So you want to initiate your breath as soon as you start to get out of the chair. If you're going to sit down in the chair, you want to initiate your breath rather than hold it. Holding the breath while in motion is really, in a way, dangerous, because that's where people incur injuries. So anyway, breathing is automatic. It's great that it's automatic. However, there's a lot we can do consciously to modify our breath, as we're going to talk about today, that are great, that's great for optimizing health, wellness, and longevity.
Okay. All right, thank you, Bob. Now, Breck, Dr. Bob talked about quite a bit there. but I think you've also done some thinking on where you talked about the nervous system. Do you have anything else you want to add on the add to that portion of Brett?
Oh, you bet. Yeah. So breathing is directly linked to the nervous system. So, Dr. Bob's already touched on that. And when you're meaningful breathing and controlling that breathing, you can really influence the entire nervous system through, reducing the stress, like what was mentioned. But you can also have some effects, some positive, real positive effects on your cardiovascular health as well. And it supports your overall well-being.
Yeah, Tim, I wanted to also say breathing is the only way that we know of to get oxygen reliably to the tissues. So, breathing is critical for cellular health and longevity. And understanding how important breathing is for longevity supports a person living the longest, healthiest life. Shallow breathing gets less oxygen to the tissues, right? So, becoming masterful at taking full, slow, deep breaths can really help the cells of the body. And we're going to talk more about that later on.
Absolutely beautiful, Bob. All right, Brett, do you
Yeah, no, I also want to make sure that we welcome everyone that's following us on the TikTok live and Facebook live, and welcome our guests that are here on Zoom as well. I was talking about the connection with with mindful breathing and your nervous system, and think about there's two different nervous systems, right? There's a branch off of your nervous system. So you've got your your automatic system that is referred to as the ANS, which does some of the functions that Dr. Bob talked about. You don't have to think about breathing; you just automatically do that. You don't have to think about your heart beating; it just automatically does that. And so, if you look at that and then take the separation that goes into the sympathetic, which is the fight or flight, right? That part of your nervous system, and then the other branch obviously is your parasympathetic nervous system, and that's your kind of your rest and where you digest that information, and so that's the two different types of your nervous system. So if you're mindfully, slowly, deep breathing, you can activate that parasympathetic nervous system to promote that relaxation that Dr. Bob's talked about and that we've talked about before on this, and really reduces the stress response, right? And stress, triggers our sympathetic nervous system, which then leads to increased heart rate and elevated blood pressure and, rapid breathing so we can hyperventilate. So you can see that we need to focus on that breathing when we're in those stressful situations to really calm down, relax, and get the heart rate back down.
Okay, thanks, Brett. Now, do you have a word for us today from anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. So always like to thank our sponsor for this half hour. And the sponsor of this half hour is Better Alt, ALT. Improve your energy levels, enhances cognitive function, supports healthy aging while boosting your immune system. And I've even heard that it can also be beneficial to your libido as well. So not a bad side effect. With 85 plus trace elements and bioactive compounds, the pure Himalayan Shilajit is by Better Health, ALT. You can find it at their website, thebetteralt.com. Also find it at GNC and other fine retailers. I'll leave a link in the podcast notes here.
All right, thanks, Brett. So good benefits from that, and so we'll go more into. We've talked a little about the benefits of this conscious breathing and breath work. We want to dive a little bit more into that now for for the crowd and for the guests. And one of the things I want to focus on, so we talked about the nervous system, talked about longevity with Bob, but also there's just a lot of cognitive benefits that really come from really breathing correctly. And that comes from, just like Bob talked about, breathing is how we get oxygen. And so you just control breathing, this depth of breathing. And athletes, know this as they, prepare and recover and work towards that. but that improved oxygen supply really gets the flow going to the brain. And that really helps with that clarity and with that focus. I remember when I used to try and get into my, psyching up for my meets, I would focus on that, what breathing I was doing, and I was undertaking with that. You've talked about that activation of the nervous system. And that really works to promote the stress relief, promote relaxation, which are good for clarity, good for you, pumping up your ability to concentrate. And what's also been found with that breathing and really focusing on it, it enhances the connection between both parts of the brain. So when you can enhance that connection and create new pathways between them, that's really when you start improving your ability to get breakthrough thinking, to your problem solving, for clarity, and to absorb and process information. And as part of that last part, and even in the absorbing and process information, you can even entrain your brain, get it, I used to think of this a long time ago as voodoo and magic, and people would talk about different brain waves and in training. But as you really study it and you think about it, what do you do when you take it to the what's the E? Is it which one is the brain one? Breck, is it the EK? Is the EEG or the EKG is the brain one? But either way, when they're managing those waves, there are different type of ways to go into. Your brain gets into different ways and states as you sleep. And one of the things you can get into by really focus, and that again, as I thought more about it, what's that state the athletes call being in the zone, being in the flow? That's a different brain state than just altering it a bit of it. And so part of that, if you breathe correctly, you can get yourself in what's called the alpha state. And that's more also is associated with creativity and improved memory and performance. So it's as I talked about in the open a little bit, this is not only focus on the body, but focusing on the brain and the mind. And this whole series Bob took us into forced us to talk about the mind-body connections. And this is one of the places where it really comes together when you talk about this breathing and connecting things. And that's part of the way it was used in the martial arts, and still used in the martial arts, to really connect that body, connect the mind to the body, and make it in unison and make it happen as one for people. But aside from that, there are other areas that we've alluded to that I think there are benefits on it, such as, Bob, I think you want to talk a little bit about pain management and the immune functions a little bit more as well.
Well, first thing I want to say is that breathing is a really cool thing, and yet breathing without intention is like almost a waste, because with all the modalities we're talking about, whether it's yoga or Tai Chi or anything, having an intention, the mind's intention to go along with the breathing is vitally important. And that's how you can produce, for instance, great sleep. I'll talk about that a little bit later. When you're slowing your breath down and you're relaxing, your vagus nerve is slowing the heart rate, and it's lowering the blood pressure. So it's really working well in that regard. And then a lot of great things happen in terms of the immune system, because when you get improved blood flow in terms of you're relaxing the muscles that are surrounding the blood vessels to get better blood flow that way. You have less stress hormones, and the body's able to really clear out inflammation. So breathing can really help in that regard. And in terms of pain, I always tell people, I coach people on this, is that if you have a strong pain area that you want to help get relief for, you want to imagine that you're inhaling, you're breathing in through that pain area. Let's say it's your left knee. So you're going to imagine that you're breathing in through your left knee. The air is coming in there, and then you exhale, and the air is leaving that that knee, and it's as it's leaving, it's carrying away the discomfort. And people would be shocked to know how effective that is when they focus on an area and breathe slowly and intentionally, having the intention that the discomfort is going to reduce and maybe even disappear. So having the breath, taking slow breathing with the intention, which is so important, the intention of the mind, harnessing the power of the mind to coordinate with the breath, really works well together.
Okay. Now, as part of questions come in already for us, and both of you have talked about sort of the nervous system, which the vagus nerve is part of. But I want to know if this intentional breathing and this focus on breath work can stimulate the vagus nerve specifically. Do either one of you want to comment on that?
Well, anytime you slow the breath down and you're you're relaxing yourself, you're activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the vagus nerve is a big part of. So that's gonna kick in for sure.
Yeah. And what's your Breck, were you going to add something to that? Or?
No, I was going to turn that question over to Dr. Bob, since he is the brain expert and has the biology background there. But yeah, it's absolutely connected, right? And when you're in control of your breathing, is telling your system this is what you want to do. You want to relax, you want to calm down, and so it's all connected.
And also, when people go to the doctor, they go to the doctor's office, they take their blood pressure immediately, and that's about the worst thing anybody could do, because if you don't settle yourself down, relax your breathing, your blood pressure, you can end up on blood pressure medication because you've got the white coat response, the nervousness of being in the office, and just the fact that you haven't settled yourself down.
Yeah, and I smile for you on that one, Bob, because that is me. I have that lab coat syndrome, even, and I guess at some point I just believe that at some point I'm going to walk into the, and probably maybe will, hopefully it's not for a long time. I'll walk into that doctor and I have them look at me, and they're going to give me at some point they're going to give me some news I don't want to hear. So I don't know if it's this visit or the next visit, but I have that. You want to know the last time I went in, and I didn't even, this one wasn't even bad. I mean, I barely got in there. My that high, the first number, it hit 160, Bob.
Wow, nice. You're up there.
And they were getting worried. But this time, because I had, we talked about in one of our earlier things, like take control of your health, where I talked about you got to have your blood pressure monitor. So I got tired of hearing this, though. So I had brought my little blood pressure monitor with me. And I said, let's take it with this one to make sure that it's the same. And boom, it was right up there. So I said, now you know this is accurate. But then I turned around and said, this thing has a little memory on it. Now, and I poked the memory, and you see what my average has been, and you see where I'm at. There's nowhere near this. You don't have to be concerned, and neither do I. So let's not talk about this anymore.
Yeah. Well, excuse me. A question came up about what's the best way to avoid the white coat syndrome, and to me, the key is it's all about the true future visioning. What do we really want? We want to go in the doctor's office and we want to have our blood pressure be as low as it should be, as low as it belongs, right? So maybe it's if we think it's normally 115 over 75, which is kind of where mine runs usually. And if I go in the office, if I don't think about it, I can end up being 135 over 95 right away as soon as they take it. So the trick is to just slow your breathing down, relax yourself, relax all of your peripheral muscles too, because when the peripheral muscles are activated, they're constricting blood vessels, and that's increasing blood pressure. So it's really important to relax your whole body, slow your breathing down, and then have the true future vision, as I call it, of perfect blood pressure. It's measures out wonderfully. You get the great numbers, and that's what happens. And then right. And that's the way to me, that's the way to do it. You got to couple the intention of great blood pressure measures with the slowing of the breathing. And so together, and also the relaxation of the muscles, because if we're tense, we're going to, our blood pressure is going to go sky high. So that's what I would recommend for the person who asked that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the very first thing you do, right, when they put the pressure cuff on is you tense up, your shoulder tenses up. And so you've got to remember to relax that. And the question that also came in that for you that either Tim or Dr. Bob is there really a difference between breathing through your nose versus breathing through your mouth? Is there one better than the other? Is there a technique there that or any science behind breathing through the nose versus the mouth?
Well, I'll let the former collegiate wrestler tackle that one first, and then I'll come in after. How's that? Or you can pass it back to me, Tim.
Well, and I might just pass it back to you. I will say, one of the, and then don't let me forget that we should go back to the vagus nerve from the standpoint of articulating what that vagus, why such a big deal around vagus nerve stimulation these days, and why are people focusing on? I think we got to highlight that for others. But then in terms of the difference between the nose and the mouth breathing, I did this. for this purposes, for intention, for recovery, for focus, I like to, and there's a thing we used to do in one of the martial arts, a meditation called the Dantian meditation, which is the heavenly gate, and you focus on it, and you focus on bringing the air into it and circulating it out. I think for recovery, for focus, we used to focus on the mouth being open to exhale. But to inhale, in terms of for warming of the brain and the circulation of the air, we really like to focus on bringing it in through the nostrils. So so that's going to be my area of comment on it, Bob, is from the focus for bringing in, for the filtering of the airs, the bringing it in through the nose and the help of the concentration, but for the exhaling and for the recovery, and to that part of the focus is to exhale through the mouth. That's what we used to do.
Yep.
I concur.
What? Come on, that can't be right. But yeah, no, there's so much benefit, right, through the filtration. Now, if you need to quickly get oxygen in, then the filtering needs to be put aside, right? You just got to get the oxygen in. And I'm going to go share a technique about first thing in the morning, making sure that you're properly oxygenating your body. Be happy to share that with you too. But yeah, for that filtration, absolutely through the nose, nice, steady, and really from the diaphragm, right? Really getting it to the bottom of your lungs. We spend the majority of our time just breathing with the top 2/3 of our lungs. We really need to take those deep breaths to really get it down to the bottom of our lungs.
Right. Okay. So there's someone, and I guess let's go into some of those techniques a little bit. And I'm looking at one of the questions here and see if we can match it into one of those questions as well, which talks about how can breathing help people in the workplace in handling difficult. Well, there's two questions there. One, working at how can you work in the workplace, and two, how breathing helps. Yeah, that related helps people in the workplace handle difficult conversations. So let's talk about the techniques a little bit and see if we can work in there a little bit, how that can help you with your difficult workplace conversations.
Well, that's an interesting question about how to handle challenging workplace conversations. That made me get into my communication training background and trying to coordinate that with breath all in about 15 seconds. It's a great question. And I would say that when there's a conversation that's perceived to be challenging, that's when you want to keep your breath moving. Keep your breath moving, because if somebody perceives a conversation to be challenging, that's going to be the fear related to fear, concern, worry, anxiety, and then there's going to be a tendency for the breath to get really shallow. So the best thing you can do is keep your breath going, and also have the shift from the conversation is challenging to this conversation is a contribution to me and them. We have to shift the way we think about it so that we're not reacting to it like, uh-oh, this is a problem. So, if we have a conversation that we perceive to be challenging, then it's going to be challenging, and it's going to affect us in certain ways that we maybe don't want. So I recommend always shifting our view to one of, this is a great conversation that's going to contribute to both all the people involved. So, and keep your breath going nice and slowly and fully, and that'll help relax you.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say that, obviously the benefits, right, from that is lowering your blood pressure, lowering your heart rate so that you don't have all of that anxiety built up. So many heart benefits that go along with also balancing a difficult conversation.
Absolutely. Okay. All right.
Other than that, you could use the alternating nasal breathing technique right there in front of your boss, and it'll really throw them off their game and wonder what the heck has gotten into you. But
so what is that alternate nasal breathing technique, Breck?
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting concept that has all kinds of benefits, right? And helping with both the right and left hemisphere of your brain. And it's something that's been practiced in yoga for many years. There's an Anani Shadna or something like that is what it's called, but it's simply focusing on breathing, taking in and exhaling through the same nostril and then switching to the other nostril. Well, how do you do that without having to plug one of the nostrils? So the methodology that I was taught was, to bring your right hand up. It works with your left hand too, but for some reason I'm right-handed, so that was how I was instructed. And if you have a hard time, leaving that ring finger up and just bringing the other two fingers down, you can just do the hang loose sign is probably the easiest way to do that. But if you do the hang loose sign and you start with, your right nostril first, so you'd plug your right nostril and then breathe through your left, taking a big, full, deep breath, then releasing through the same nostril, and then switching sides. Through the right, release through the right, and then switch sides. You do that, but even before you start that, make sure you take a couple of deep breaths, kind of center yourself first, and then you can do and that's really supposed to help, like I said, with your right and left brain, and really stimulating both hemispheres of your brain in mindful breathing.
Right. Now, so I had to remind myself, you guys didn't help me out here on Brex will talk about the mindful breathing there. We did stimulate me. We were supposed to go back to the vagus nerve. So Bob, I'm throwing that one back to you if you so choose to accept it on why. So the question, going back, the question was asked earlier, does this controlled breathing, does this conscious breathing stimulate the vagus nerve? The answer was yes. But I think we left the door open as to, so what? So why do you is that stimulation of the vagus nerve good? And if so, for what? And if not, why not? Do you have any thinking on that?
I'm going to pass on that, Tim. No, I'm just kidding.
Go ahead, you pass it back.
I'm going to pass that one back to you, Tim. Now, okay, so people focus on the vagus nerve a lot because of its importance in the parasympathetic nervous system. The vagus nerve controls so much in terms of quieting and calming of all the different organs in the body. And and a lot of people relate, harnessing the power of the vagus nerve to releasing trauma. So that's a big deal. And everybody seems to be having to deal with trauma. And I have my particular ways of helping people deal with trauma that I think are really fast and furious and work really well. But there's a lot of different ways to deal with trauma. And people who are dealing with trauma like to be able to activate the vagus nerve to calm the body down, to calm the system down. And then at the same time, utilize their mind-brain connection to liberate themselves from whatever trauma they've been experiencing. So because the vagus nerve is so pervasive everywhere in the body, it's considered extremely important as a counterbalancing to the sympathetic nervous system, which Breck talked about, fight or flight business, and the pumping out adrenaline and whatnot. So anyway, that's what I would say, that the vagus nerve is super important for a calming effect. And it's also, people feel that it's really important to harness the power and control over your vagus nerve so you can liberate yourself from any trauma you might have experienced in your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So it's good for the mood regulation, the trauma elimination. It's people also related to that. People talk that it's a very tight between the gut brain connection is the pathway for that to facilitate portion. And then also I've seen some thinking on that vagus nerve is really key to help to regulate as it should be, with the mood and relaxation, both the heartbeat and respiration. So control that so it doesn't get out of hand. But then also key to on the inflammation front, helping the body regulate inflammation and keep it down, because we should know some level of inflammation is good. That's how we fight out infection. That's how we recover from injury. But chronic low inflammation of X level is more and more being linked to as a cause to arthritis and other diseases and prompting of that. So it helps across that spectrum. So see, you could have thrown it back to me, Bob. I was, yeah. You could have caught it and just thrown it right back at me. I wouldn't have been as expansive and as full as you, but I would have had a little bit to say on
Very nice, Tim. Very nice. Next time I'm just going to kick it back.
it. All right. So you went through that, the alternating nostril technique.
Mhm.
But there are a couple of other techniques that people often talk about, like the Winhofer and the box technique. You folks have any comment on what those are and what they may or may not be good for?
I just want to say at the outset, before I go into any of those, that people have messed around with their breathing style, rate, technique. There's so many different ways, and so I think the beauty of all of it is that when people are attempting any of these, they're focusing on the breath. And if they bring in the intention, the mind's intention to produce certain results while they're focused on the breath, that's the beauty of it. So to me, it doesn't matter like what technique you use for breathing, as long as you're focused on your breathing and you have some intention you want to produce. Having said that, the box breathing technique is something that somebody created where it was Dr. Box. No, I'm just joking. I'm not sure about that. But so the box technique is basically where you sit in your chair upright and you inhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold the breath for 4 seconds, and then you exhale for 4 seconds, and then you pause for 4 seconds at the bottom. So it's 4, pause 4, 4, pause 4, and then repeat. So that's the box technique. It should be done slowly and measurably, and it has all the great benefits of breathing. I'm just going to say that, it's just which they all do. And then, of course, the Wim Hof technique is really interesting because this guy Wim Hof, he was a Dutch athlete, and he was best known for his record-breaking feats, swimming under ice and running barefoot on ice and snow. And so he built up a whole business on combining breathing with cold. So he'll stay in ice baths while he's breathing, right? I'm not sure that I would necessarily recommend that as a technique, but you can be sure that when you do that, you're actually, anybody who can relax in an ice bath, that's a winner. I used to, when I lived I'm now in Florida, but when I lived in Michigan, I used to walk outside barefoot in the snow a lot, just to practice maintaining being relaxed while being stimulated by that cold. Because most people, when they get that cold, they have an immediate reaction and start to tense up. So anyway, I think that's what Wim Hof's best aspect of what he does is that you get in this ice bath and you relax yourself and you practice you engage in full breathing, and it's going to have a benefit, especially if you can relax in there.
Yeah, I was going to say, usually when I'm in cold water, I'm hyperventilating, right? You're breathing too fast.
You're not breathing at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, one thing, that sort of box breathing technique that you mentioned, that goes back, I think, I want to relate that back a little bit to the question on, how do you handle what breathing might be good in a stressful work situation?
No, I don't think the box breathing is going to do it.
Yeah.
You know why, Tim?
Why, Bob?
Because I'm going to, okay, you and I are having a difficult conversation, Tim. I'm going to inhale for 4 seconds. Then I'm going to hold it for 4 seconds, right?
You can't talk.
And then I might be able to do, but then I'm going to exhale for 4 seconds. And I think you think I'm totally weird. So
well, Breck told me you were anyway. So
I was the one that was going to pull out the alternating nasal breathing in front of your difficult situation.
So yes, Bob, I would 100% agree with you that during that conversation that you're having, that box breathing isn't going to work. If you're preparing for a difficult conversation and trying to get in the mode for the difficult conversation, then I think that box breathing I think there's a whole other thing, you talked about communication style. I think there's all other types of preparation that's required for this workplace stressful, difficult conversation that needs to be done. But just specifically on the breathing part of it, I think in terms of before before you go into that conversation, if you could get away a little bit and do a little box breathing, that it could be good preparation for it. But no, and
I concur.
yeah, thanks. But just like I thank you for that. But yes, what came to mind is if I'm out there wrestling and I'm trying to practice box breathing in that difficult situation, I'm not gonna have it. And if Armand is holding his breath as he's trying to lift, now he's a bodybuilder, but I'm sure he gets into some heavier weights too. That breath going to destroy himself. So yes, well, I'm in agreement on that part. Wow. Okay. All right. So, Breck, any other techniques that come to mind for you that we should be covering here?
Yeah, there's one that I want to give credit to Gary Brecka on. So he's a human biologist and a health influencer, wellness influencer on social media. But a routine every morning that he does, and that's when I commented earlier about that. It doesn't matter how you bring the oxygen in, you just want to get your body as much oxygen first thing in the morning as possible. And he has this routine that I've started to use. It's 3 rounds of 5 breaths, and very obnoxiously taking those breaths in, very animated, like really, and really feel it from the diaphragm and try to bring as much in, fill those lungs as full as you can, and then release that breath. Find a quiet place where you're not going to be embarrassed to be animated about your breathing. And then also, it's probably important that you are sitting upright or even laying down when you do this, because you can get lightheaded. So you don't want to accidentally lose your balance and fall if you're standing trying to do this. So sit down, get your core really elongated and stretched out so that you can fill up your lungs fully, filling your stomach come completely out, because you want your diaphragm to push down onto your intestines when you do that. And then again, doesn't matter if it's through your mouth or through your nose, whatever you feel comfortable. You just really get intense and bring as much oxygen in as you possibly can. And the whole purpose of that is, getting it's the gas exchange in your body. So you've been sleeping, and some people sleep better than others, and some may even have have to be on breathing machines and other things like that because they actually stop breathing in the night. So your brain is starving for oxygen. And so first thing in the morning, you want to get as much into your cells as you possibly can. So that through that technique of, like I said, the really deep breaths, 3 rounds of 5 big, deep breaths, and then exhaling to get as much into your system as possible.
Right. And so that gets into one of the questions that we had, I think we had, was how long should you practice some of these breathing techniques? So on that one, it was as you articulated there, Breck, I think the Wim Hof one, they talk about 40 breaths doing on that one. And then, some of the meditative things as part of the meditation, like a part of that Dantian meditation, that could go on for hours. People would do it at times, but at least if you want, that gets into some of how we want to integrate this in the daily life, as we'll always talk about, as well as how do you make this part of your overall wellness routine. But that sort of deep circular breathing, the belly breathing, the diaphragm breathing, I think that's, try to get away and do that for at least 15 minutes a day if you can at some point.
Yeah, I know. I'll make the point that that's the starting point, right? You got to start somewhere. So start with the 3 rounds of 5 breaths. Gary's up to 30 breaths, 3 rounds of 30 breaths. That I would pass out probably, taking that much oxygen in all at once. So you got to start somewhere and then kind of work up to it.
Yeah. And then just a side note, a couple comments for you folks. I saw Dr. Bob respond to one part of it, but we had a comment from the audience, and we were back on, I think it came about when we were on the Wim Hof and using the ice and cold water. Said cold water therapy and might be a good topic for us. So at later points, that's something to consider. And then it was, this may have come about during our conversation, Bob, or said also maybe pausing on whether the box breathing could be used in a difficult work situation. So also maybe pausing for a moment, doing one cycle box breathing is the option, don't you think? And you might indeed be able to get away with one cycle during the conversation. You're on mute, Bob.
No wonder I haven't been able to say anything. These guys are ignoring me.
Never, Bob.
I have a completely different philosophy than all the people who want to sit around doing 15 minutes and 30 minutes and all this stuff.
Go with it.
I don't do it. I don't do it. So what I say, so I'm either a 30-minute interval guy or a 1 hour interval guy, it just depends. But every 30 minutes or so, or every hour, depending on what's going on in my day, at least once an hour, I'm going to stand up, move around, get one of those, what do we call them? Movement snacks in.
Yes.
And also I'm going to, before I even do that, I'm going to do just a few breaths. That's all. I'm not, it's all a matter of making sure that my mind knows that deeper breathing and slow, full breathing is more important. And I don't need to do that for 15 or 30 minutes to train my mind. That's just my philosophy about it. Okay. I'm into interrupting patterns and bringing in new patterns. And to do that doesn't take very much. So every half an hour, every hour, it's time to interrupt what's going on, take a few deep full breaths, get up, move around real quick, get a movement snack in, unlock the pelvis, do some proper walking techniques, looking up, looking long, swinging those arms, and then come back and sit down and do it again.
Yeah, so my comment on that, I think certainly for some of the interruption purposes that you've got there, no debate on that. And certainly I also think it depends on the level of person's expertise to change things. But also, for example, when I was a high school wrestler or a junior high wrestler trying to get myself into the right mental state, sometimes that took hours. By the time I got to the collegiate level where I could get into it and had done it for so much, I often could do that in 15 minutes, but it was having built up to that. So I think, I think it's what one's trying to achieve and one's level of expertise in it, the change from that back to that, get to the alpha state that was talked about and other types of things of that nature. You might need to go longer,
Well, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's all about, that's why I love hypnotherapy, because in hypnotherapy, you can train somebody under hypnosis to so instantly alter their whole affect and state of being. And so that's why, so I think everything can be done really fast. That's just me. But anyway.
Now, before I let that drop, Bob, what about your guided visualization? So and don't you want somebody, how long do you want somebody doing guided visualization? And don't you want them breathing in a way during that?
Yeah, so the key word is guided. Okay, so for guided meditations, those are language based, and we want to accomplish some specific objectives using the language basis. So the shortest guided meditation I would provide for somebody, for a client, let's say, would be 5-7 minutes max, and that'd be the shortest. Okay. And then for long ones, I can go, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 15 minutes. If somebody's going to fall 20, I have a 26-minute one that's super fantastic for optimizing sleep and high performance living, and for 26 minutes, it's fantastic. And people can fall asleep to that. So it can be a nice long guided meditation if somebody's going to sleep to it. But I believe that the way I work is I get the shifts in state of being accomplished and the automatic pattern interruption accomplished really quickly. So that's just my philosophy about it.
Good use of it.
Yeah. So a question came in on social media here, since we've been discussing several breathing techniques. For someone new to mindful breathing, which technique would you recommend you start as a starting point, and why? So kind of that goes right in line with what you were saying, Bob. Just get into the routine of doing those throughout the day, kind of like your movement stacks. You have some mindful, meaningful breathing throughout the day as well. For me, it would be that first thing in the morning, right? That wake up routine, and really get your body full of oxygen and wake up your mind and And do you have a favorite that you would be your go-to as a starting point, Tim?
No, I'm going to give that to Bob.
He just held his breath right there. Okay, so for me, my favorite breathing technique is super slow, super deep, to the point where inhaling through my nose and exhaling through my mouth, so that nobody I'm in the presence of has any idea I'm doing it.
Mhm.
That's my favorite technique. I want to be able to do a full, deep breath, inhaling through the nose without looking like, so that nobody knows that I'm even doing it. That's my favorite kind of technique.
Yeah. Okay. Another question was, how long does someone need to practice these breathing techniques before seeing noticing a significant benefit in their overall health and wellness? I can tell you that it's immediate reaction, right? You're talk about going back to the doctor for the checkup and they're putting the pressure cuff on you. You need to have that immediately, react right then and there. So hopefully you've gone in with that proper mindset, like you talked about, Dr. Bob, but taking those deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, releasing very slowly and relaxing your shoulder. Shoulders, you're going to see an immediate difference in dropping your blood pressure.
You're on mute, Bob.
Well,
I'm trying to quiet my cough down, so I go to mute. Here we are. Here's what I want to say about breathing at night before sleep. I think it's vitally important to spend a few minutes, it doesn't have to be a long time, focusing on your breath and focusing on what intentions you have for the mind-body connection, the mind-brain-body connection. I always talk about nowadays the mind-brain-body connection, because the brain is controlled by the mind. And so the brain doesn't exactly know what to do except for the parasympathetics, because they're automatic. So I like to spend time in the evening while I'm in bed, just before I go to bed, focusing on my breath, relaxing myself, and developing intentions for what my mind, brain, body connection is going to do overnight. What's it going to produce? And I want to tell a quickie story, because I was pausing in my breath in the middle of the night, and my wife was noticing that my breath was I was stopping breathing, and so she'd keep bumping me, to get me breathing again. And she says, you should get checked out for sleep apnea. And so I said, okay, I'll go get checked out. So I went to the doctor, pulmonologist, checked out everything, and he says, I really don't think everything's great with you. You don't take any pharmaceuticals. Your lungs are clear, everything's wonderful. I don't think you really need to do a sleep apnea test. And I said, well, maybe my wife will feel more comfortable if I do that. So why don't we do that? So I did the test. I brought the machine in. He looked it over. He goes, you got one of the worst cases of sleep apnea I've ever seen. So, he says, you might want to get a machine and try it to see if it helps you. And I said, okay, let me think about it. I was, I felt fine. I was really feeling good, not losing energy during the day. Anyway, so what I started doing was, before I'd go to bed, I would have the intention, right, that my true future vision is like, I'm going to breathe normally all the way through the night. I'm going to initiate breath when I need to, and I'll have breath that's not initiated when I don't need to. And I'll be breathing normally, and I'll have all the oxygen I need overnight. So I did that for, several weeks. And after that, my wife never noticed me with sleep apnea again. So it's an anecdote, but it's an interesting one. The point is that if you think about what you want to accomplish overnight, I always ask myself a question, we're developing this funnel for a series of seminars we're doing in Minnesota. And over last night before I went to bed, I said, okay, I got to test the payment system. So how am I going to do that? Okay, come up with the answer in the morning. In the morning, I had the answer. I knew exactly how I was going to test it. It was perfect. So I'm just encouraging people to take advantage of that style or that technique of inquiry to what you want to accomplish. It's really powerful. It really works.
Yeah.
So we talked about a morning routine for breathing. There's one question on that as well and your sleep routine, Bob, and some added portion of that. Now, so before I go back, so Brock, I think as you talked about morning routine, the question is, would that also get the pulse up? I want you to answer. But yeah, so like you, Bob, but I decided I'm not going to let this quick thing go. I I think like you talk about, so the morning routine, the evening routine, the movement thing, I think is great. I'm going to tie it back a little bit to, I mentioned this in one other show. When my first couple of years as a collegiate wrestler, I was a 50-50 guy, winning, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. Winning half and losing more. By my senior year, the way I changed that, I got up to, I was 10-1 before I got hurt. And people were saying, how'd you pick to turn this around? And it was, I said, meditation. And they kind of laughed. This is the days before that. Now, how am I tying that to breathing? Breathing is a very big part of meditation. How do you get to that the mental state? It's part of your, I would, part of, that's why I asked you about the guided visualization. I would do that in combination, and I've carried on with my life. But I would actually do 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes in the evening, getting my what you would call a future state. I didn't call it a future state back in those days. I really examined myself and said, this is where I'm defaulting, this is where I'm missing. Example of that, when I was in high school, I'd get so far ahead. I was ahead and I really had to come back. College, if somebody got ahead of me, I'd say, okay, boy, I'm done. I changed that, the little meditation in my mind to say, I will not quit. I'll wrestle till the end, and combine that with breathing. So I think it's part of what we're talking about, how you combine this stuff. So as you combine these things, as you combine them with exercise, as you combine them with meditation, as you combine it with some transformation, there's opportunity for it to go longer and quickly. Now, what I would say, I think about, I did go with your technique. As I got up and moved around, I still would repeat that too. I would do little changes instantly as well, with little mantra I'd have, with little change of breathing, little change of focus that I would do every couple of hours too. So I did a combination of that.
Yeah, I want to walk myself back on something. I'm giving the impression that things can happen. This. There's a learning curve for everything. Okay, so anytime somebody wants to start practicing breathing techniques, they should understand that there is a learning curve. They want to immerse themselves in it, like you said, Tim and Breck, so that they can get the feel for what's going on with the breathing. So that is important. As they get better and better at it, and they can become more familiar with the technique, then things can happen really fast, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yep.
And the other thing, and I don't, I do, I believe in some of this healing portion and stimulating things. I think there's a whole discipline, right, where the different chakra points you stimulate as you focus on the breath, and where you direct things into on that one. And I just found, and again, it's the same thing, Bob, but you just went to, when I first started looking at that, to stimulate that and feel it and try and get healing, you're supposed to visualize see the colors that are happening at different points. That would take a long time. Now I can do it much faster, but it's, so it's where, like I said, where, just what you said, where you're at, what you're developing, and how to get it going on that.
Yeah. Tim, another really important question came in, and I'll also address my breathing technique and what it does to the pulse as well. But let's answer this one first, because I think it's very important. Can breath work be beneficial for individuals with respiratory conditions like asthma or COPD? And then what precautions should be taken?
Yeah, I would say, absolutely. I get some of that, especially on the COPD front, and then with some clients that have had it, then that portion I got from more working in my home care days, where I ran that agency for 8 years and had people working with COPD and sometimes support them in their rehabilitation. On the asthma, it's just working with some clients. So yes, it can, and there's actually a little different technique for people with COPD and limited lung capacity that we really didn't talk about, and that's called blowing up a balloon. And they have found that really just taking that and focusing on blowing out that balloon can really help with the capacity and the recovery. However, yes, I would say you got to be careful. I don't think you want to run around holding your breath to back to Bob, there's one where I wouldn't recommend the box technique when you've got COPD. I think you should do it in combination. So whatever you do, do in combination with your with a healthcare provider. But absolutely, certainly, and you talk about asthma as well. The tenseness, the anxiety can come with it. Some of the breathing techniques can play a factor in helping to work those as well. Bob, you had something on that?
Yeah, when I work with people who have breathing challenges like COPD or asthma, um, I want to check out their body structure because a lot of people that have COPD are their chest is collapsed and compressed, and so they're trying to breathe in against all that compression, and that's a real problem. So when I do effective muscle release to open up this area, that can help quite a bit. And then I'd have some specific diaphragmatic movements that people can do to get more diaphragm movement, right? So, and then of course the stress component is huge. You know, de-stressing people, no matter what's going on, is really important, but especially with regard to asthma. You know, and also the future visioning is really important because as soon as somebody takes a certain breath a certain way, and it's like the first response is, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. This is going this direction." Guess what? They're in trouble, and it's going that direction. So they really need to figure out how to shift their mindset as soon as they get that trigger. Oh, there it is. I recognize it. Fantastic.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
then relax themselves and, you know, they're out of it. So
It's just like that. Oh no, I'm awake. I'm not going to be able to sleep the rest of the night. Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, that's probably
right.
what's going to happen to you. So, well, let
Exactly.
me address the pulse question real quick. Pulse is controlled absolutely the same way that we've been talking about. The same way to get your blood pressure down. You control your pulse up and down. When I wake up in the morning, I do my 3 sets of those deep breathing. My pulse is not at a resting pulse rate any longer. It really gets my blood going and brings my pulse up. But then I also can then bring my pulse back down by practicing either the box technique or just some really good deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth.
Great. All right, it's we're about out of time here. This one's gone by quite a bit. Breck, anything you want to give us for wrap up or parting words? Or
No, that's great. We had a great turnout today. Appreciate everybody being here for the lives, live on TikTok, Facebook, and then here in the Zoom room.
Thank you, appreciate it. And so yeah, we've been able to go through sort of we hope point you in that direction on the fact that breathing can be good for mental development, for creativity, for your nervous system, for your immunity, and many other things, and hopefully giving you some starting points. That hope you come back and join us next week. We will have a special guest panelist with us, and we'll be focusing on how Tai Chi and Qi Gong are really can provide true health benefits.
That's going to be really fun. That's going to be really interesting. Those are phenomenal techniques and some of my favorites, even
Yeah,
though
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.